This guy, this dude right here, is absolutely mad, but I love it. Okay. I might be way off base with this. Part of me kind of hopes I am, but I want you just to think about the structure of this flashback that we're in right now with Whitebeard and Roger and Odin and everybody, okay? It stands to reason that Oda planned this to be like the first time we get to see Roger and Whitebeard fight in their prime. I mean, yeah, we did get to see Whitebeard fight during Marineford. It was awesome, but keep in mind, he was in his 70s at that point. He was really sick. You know, Whitebeard at Marineford, Whitebeard versus, you know, himself when he was in his prime. Huge difference. Like, if Whitebeard rolled up to Marineford in his prime, or hell, even if Whitebeard rolled up to Marineford still, like, in his 70s, just not sick, like Rayleigh. Rayleigh's, like, 78, 79 years old, but he's, like, healthy, okay? If Whitebeard showed up like that to Marineford, that would have been a totally different arc, okay? But, you know, okay, Oda's like, I'm doing this flashback, I'm gonna show Roger fighting for the first time with his sword, I'm gonna see, you know, we're gonna see Whitebeard fighting with his Guru Guru no Mi and his Baisento and the haki flying, and it's crazy. What if Oda thought, hey, I need to come up with a really good way to showcase how strong they are. So, I'm gonna build up Kozuki Odin as this incredibly powerful Chad amongst Chads. I'm gonna do this whole chapter where I just spend the entire half of a chapter just building up like Odin when he was first born. He threw his wet nurse across a room, and he fought a bear and defeated at the age of 4 with a giant boulder, and he rerouted rivers, and he's so charismatic he lured a bunch of women out to a mountain fortress and started an entire revolution. He sliced a giant mountain god in half. You know, he's the kind of guy that just right out of the womb, he was automatically the most badass guy ever. And Roger still just smacked him with his sword and knocked him into a tree with one swing of his mighty blade. You know, he didn't even go both hands like he did with Whitebeard. You know, Roger just takes out his sword and uses like a one-handed, one-arm slash called Kamusari, which just means God's demise, which, yeah, I guess you don't need a god anymore once you have a mustache as epic as that when you start naming your attacks after the end of a god, okay? But no, Roger, it didn't seem like he put that much oomph into it. I mean, yeah, he hockeyed it up and everything, but it looked like he put way more effort when he clashed with Whitebeard, okay? So I'm wondering, now listen, it wasn't like he took out Odin with one shot. It's not like one shot from Roger was enough to get Odin on the ground, like, begging for his life or anything like that. But Odin was blocking Roger's attack with Enma and Ame no Habakiri, both Meito rank swords that are Owazamonos. He had his own haki. You know, he blocked the attack, and the attack still sent him flying. Odin was coughing up blood. He slammed into a tree. Odin recovered rather quickly from that, but still, from just all of the buildup that this guy was able to handle, he held onto a chain, being towed by a ship through the New World for 3 days. I'm sorry, 2 days, 23 hours. But he went through all of that, and that was just to kind of give us a good base for how ungodly strong, quite literally, Roger and Whitebeard are. Alright, so Oda, my goodness, man, you are a magnificent writer, okay? So, today, we will be talking about the original monster trio. That's right. Before we had this rubber guy that can turn into a snack, and we had this guy that thinks he's so cool just because he has a scar on his eye, and that he is really that cool because he has a scar on his eye, and this guy that can, I don't know, make a really good cupcake, and ooh, he can light his leg on fire. Yeah, before we had all of those, we had Goldie Roger, Gold Roger, Silver's Rayleigh, and probably the strongest out of all of them, Scopper Gaban, alright? So yeah, these are the top 3 strongest fighters on the Roger crew, okay? Including Roger himself, much like the strongest on the Straw Hat crew right now, or you got Luffy, you got Zoro, and you got Sanji. Who's the 4th strongest, by the way, in that regard? Not including Jinbei, because Oda's not including Jinbei yet, okay? Not including Jinbei, who would be number 4? Honestly, I think Frankie kind of takes that. I mean, yeah, just in terms of sheer firepower alone, Frankie has giant lasers at his disposal, okay? So, yeah, I mean, when Jinbei officially reaches Wano and he's actually palling around with the crew like he's a real member or something, yeah, Jinbei probably. But for right now, I think Frankie is a solid choice for the fourth, okay? But anyway, yeah, so Roger confirms this, during the flashback that Frankie is the strongest. No, Roger confirms when he was running to go fight against Odin, because Roger really wanted to meet Odin. He read stories about him in the paper, that he was on Whitebeard's crew, and he's like, I really want to meet this samurai from Wano. So they hear Odin rushing toward them, and Roger's like, oh, well, Rayleigh, Scopper, just sit back right now, because I don't want my two best men to get hurt. I'm the one that wants to handle this. And Rayleigh's just like, you just want to deal with him yourself because you're excited to meet him, because Roger's kind of like a little kid in that regard, right? So that pretty much confirms right there. I mean, I didn't bring it up in the review because it was always kind of obvious to me, like, just going by their names and their titles, and no, they're not their titles, they're their actual names. Silver's Rayleigh, that's his real name. His epithet is the Dark King, alright? But anyway, yeah, Gold Roger. Gold, regarded by many to be the most precious metal in the world. Then you have Silver, which is ranked second to Gold, and then Copper, which, okay, so it's bronze normally, like if you're going with like the Olympic medals, it goes Gold, Silver, Bronze. However, any kid that grew up playing RuneScape would undoubtedly know, if you take copper ore and tin together, you get bronze, which in RuneScape kind of looks like a chocolate bar. But okay, so yeah, bronze is like mainly copper anyway, okay? It's like a little bit of tin in there, but mainly copper. So yeah, whatever, it makes sense. Maybe Oda couldn't come up with a good name involving bronze, so he just went with like Scopper. Scopper's a good name. Let's just go with Scopper. Okay, so yeah, you figure gold, silver, copper, or bronze, okay, first, second, third strongest in the crew. Okay, so Roger all but confirms that. Something else in the video, because we know a lot about Rayleigh. I mean, not as much as we would like to know about Rayleigh, but we know quite a bit about Rayleigh because he still appears in the present storyline. He trained Luffy, he appears at Sabaody. We know he fights with a sword, he clashed with Kizaru. We got a basis of power for Rayleigh. Roger, we just found out how he fights mainly in the last chapter, because it was always kind of up in the air with that. We knew he knew haki. We figured he didn't have a devil fruit, which pretty much confirms he doesn't. Not a lot of members of the Roger crew had devil fruit powers. That's kind of what makes them so dangerous. The fact they don't have devil fruit powers, so they can still swim and all that stuff, and yet they're still this ridiculously strong. Some do. Like obviously Buggy has a devil fruit when he consumed that entire pineapple in one bite, which I still find is like, that's top 5 greatest feats in One Piece right there of all time. Buggy was able to eat that entire pineapple at once. Douglas Bullet, which his existence in the canon of the manga is still kind of up in the air. So I went back and read some supplemental material from the movie Stampede, and it turns out, and I completely forgot about this, but it turns out that Douglas Bullet, he joined up, he fought Roger a bunch of times, he just always lost, no matter what, he never won, even with Roger's illness, he never won, and 2 years before Roger was executed at Logtown, Douglas Bullet left the crew. Okay, so if Roger was executed 24 years ago, that means Bullet left the crew 26 years ago. This flashback that we're in right now with the last chapter, with Odin meeting Roger and Whitebeard and him clashing and everything like that, that took place 26 years ago. So it's entirely possible that this was right after Bullet left, if you still really want him to be canon. So it's possible. It's possible. It's just, it seems that if Oda wants to make him canon, he's not going to be that relevant to the story, okay? If you saw the movie Stampede, which has been out for several months now, Douglas Bullet, he's strong, but he's not really the most interesting character. He's not like Shiki. Shiki's got some personality to him, okay? Bullet kind of just reminded me of, like, Broly from the original Dragon Ball Z, the legendary Super Saiyan movie back in the 90s, where he's just this really strong, muscular dude that has ridiculous power, doesn't talk very much. Douglas Bullet was kind of like that in Stampede. He was one of the weaker villains, in my opinion. Still very strong and really cool fight scenes with Luffy and everything, but, yeah, so, having him not being in the manga, I mean, it's not like, I would like to see him in the background just to kind of confirm his existence. That would have been cool. But yeah, he obviously had a devil fruit though. But aside from Douglas Bullet and Buggy, Roger, Rayleigh, Gaban, they all didn't have devil fruits. Crocus did not have one. Shanks obviously doesn't have one. Seagull doesn't have one probably. So yeah, he made it to where it was with mainly just fighting with melee weapons. Roger and Rayleigh both fight with swords and haki. And you got Scopper Gaban here fighting with dual dual battle axes. That's where it's at right there. I erroneously stated in the review that that was the first time we got to see him, like how he fights with like what weapon Gaban prefers. Turns out if you go way far back earlier on in One Piece, no, you do get to see an image much earlier, you know, kind of style. Gaban looks a little different here, plus he's younger. But here you have him fighting with an axe, okay? So, I mean, like, I guess that confirmed it right there, but you just never know, because it's early One Piece. Maybe he just picked up whatever. But no, even if Oda didn't plan on what he was gonna fight with, you know, he didn't, like, get married to that idea at that point, you bet Oda probably just, like, okay, I'm gonna be drawing Scopper Gaban here. How does he fight? And Oda went back to maybe look at his notes and saw this image, and he's like, oh, I drew him fighting with an axe. Okay, well, there's not a lot of characters in One Piece that fight with axes. Okay, I'll just give him a dual battle axe kind of motif to fight with. Boom, hockey those things up, and you're ready to go chop, 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 right? You know, Scopper Gaban's chop shop's open. Bring it on, Whitebeard. All right, so I like Scopper Gaban, all right? He also might turn out to be that old dude that was hanging out, I think, in the East Blue before Marineford. That's always a popular theory of who this guy is. I think because he just has such a unique design, people want to know who he is. People were throwing out Denjiro for a while, but no, he's not Denjiro. So yeah, I guess he could be Scopper. He's got the same glasses, which is about as much evidence as anything, right? I guess Scopper decided to shave his head at one point, get a badass tattoo. I mean, it's been like over 20 years. Yeah, sure, people could change, and he looks about old enough. I'm assuming, you know, Scopper and Rayleigh and Roger, they were all around the same age, just like Luffy, Zoro, Sanji are around the same age. You know, Luffy's a little bit younger, but, you know, not by much, just a couple of years. So yeah, it might be some deal like that. So, yeah, Roger fighting with a sword. Now, the way we saw him fight with Whitebeard was he, you know, held his blade. We still don't know the name of Roger's sword yet. We just know the name of that one attack, Kamisari. And he takes his sword with both hands when he's fighting Whitebeard. And the haki it's just shooting off this thing, like, in a way we've never seen it before, okay? Where it's just, like, normally whenever Zoro uses it or something, it just, you know, makes the blade itself a black blade, you know, as long as he has haki turned on. In the anime, it's, the theatrics of it are turned up a little bit, where, like, this demon aura is, like, firing off of it. But it's even more so with Roger in the manga, where it really does seem like he's pumping so much haki into this sword that it's, like, lighting it on fire. And you just see, like, the flames of, like, just pure haki just shooting off the end of it. Kind of the same deal with Whitebeard's Bicento when Whitebeard grips it and he peels that back and it just starts shooting off. And the power of both of these weapons infused with such ungodly amounts of haki is so powerful. And Roger and Whitebeard are such, like, on an even keel there. Like, they're some of the strongest characters in the entire world at this point. They're not characters, they're men! You know, the strongest men in the world. Their weapons don't even actually manage to clash. I feel like if Roger's sword and Whitebeard's Bicento, if the blades of both of those weapons did manage to finally touch, it would be like an atom being split and just boom! Like, everything would get incinerated within, like, a 1 kilometer area of that island, okay? Where it's like there's so much force shooting off of both of these blades, they're not even touching, but they're trying, okay? So, I don't know how the rest of that fight went, because Oda skipped over it. Like, you know, okay, so they fought for 3 days. So, 3 days later, and then they're just kind of chilling out, having a gift exchange. Oda did go on to talk about this at Jump Fest this year, where he really has to be careful when writing and drawing this flashback with Odin and Whitebeard and Roger and everybody, because he's like, if I'm not careful, I might actually reveal part of, like, the ending of this manga. And, like, Oda's trying to keep him from spoiling his own manga, because especially right now, considering where we're at, also at Jump Fest, Oda talked about we're entering the climax of One Piece, guys. Like, this is it. Like, the next few years are gonna be it. You know, not an exact date yet, but it's coming up here, right? So Oda, probably more than now than any other time, he has a very clear image of it in his head where the story is going and what the climax is going to be like. I'm sure Oda's thought about this for years, you know, ever since the manga began. I'm like, he only thought One Piece was going to last like 5 years. So I'm sure at the very beginning, Oda's like, all right, this is how it's going to start, and I also have an idea on how it's going to end. It's just it ended up taking a lot longer than he figured. So he still has that image of the ending in his mind, and he probably can't wait to draw it. So he's going to try to be very careful when depicting these characters in this flashback. He doesn't want to accidentally show something that might take the majesty away from the ending of One Piece. So maybe that's why he skipped that fight. It's just like, okay, I'll show you that Roger fights with a sword. I'll show you there's the sheer amounts of crazy haki he's capable of producing. I'll show you the clash with Whitebeard and Roger and what that kind of clash would look like. But beyond that, I'm not going to spoil you. I'm not going to give you everything that Roger's got in his mighty mustache and his pockets that he could pull out, all the tricks up his sleeve and stuff. Roger's the kind of guy that might not even need tricks. Like, when you got, like, the tricks are for kids. And what is Roger? Not a kid, I'll tell you that much, you know. It's just, once you have so much ridiculous power, do you even need to, like, oh, I'll pull up this very interesting, unique sword style? Like, when you could just haki up your blade and just slice a mountain in half, as I'm sure Roger could probably do with Whitebeard as well. It's just like, you don't need fancy tricks or swordplay. You're just awesome right there. Kind of the same thing with Odin, you know. Odin, right out of, you know, right when he was born, you know, had this crazy level of, you know, strength and stamina and speed. You could say that he trained in the art of, like, katanas and, like, bushido and stuff, like, in that professional way, like, in the way you're supposed to, like, to become a samurai. Or you could just say that one day Odin picked up two, you know, really rusted, you know, blades, and he was still able to, like, slice an entire building in half, and I could believe that, you know? So, that's the thing about One Piece. It's just some people have, like, that natural talent, okay? But that's Roger. That's how Roger fights. Rayleigh, like I said, I did a whole video about Rayleigh. We really expanded upon a lot of stuff that he can do with his sword, even in his old age, even when he's well past his prime. I mean, he still takes care of himself. He's not sick as Whitebeard was in his old age. You know, he doesn't have any diseases or anything like that. So, but even with that, he was still able to clash with Kizaru. Kizaru is, like, in his 50s, so I guess you can argue that Kizaru's not really in his prime. When I consider somebody in their prime in terms of fighting ability, at least in the context of One Piece and manga, I would say probably in your late 20s, early 30s. Or maybe all of your 30s. You know, once you start getting up into, like, past your 40s, into your 50s, you're not quite at your physical peak anymore. Maybe some people would argue with me with that, but I would say late 20s, 30s is when you're, like, at your absolute peak of strength, okay? Maybe some people, because Garp did a lot of his stuff when he was in his 40s. Maybe you can argue, and Whitebeard and Roger are both in their 40s right now during this flashback, so maybe you can argue that. But, you know, because certainly when you get past 50, you get over the hill, you start to diminish a little bit. But yeah, you know, Rayleigh was still able to clash with Kizaru, and yeah, he did mention that Kizaru's a tough opponent. He's like, man, I'm not going to be able to fight Kizaru while also, you know, keeping the pacifistas and Kuma and Sentomaru. I'm not going to be able to help the Straw Hats. I got to pull all my attention to Kizaru right now, or else he's going to get loose, and that's not going to be good. So Rayleigh admitted, you know, he's not like a god or anything, you know, not like Roger, but he's like, yeah, he's still pretty ridiculously strong. We saw him swim all the way from Sabaody to the calm belt, or his ship wrecked and he had to swim through the calm belt, fight a Sea King along the way, you know, which he probably, like Chuck Norris, he took out with his bare hands, you know, he didn't even need to break out his sword for the Sea King, right? So we know how much of a badass Rayleigh is. I don't know how Rayleigh is going to be incorporated into the rest of this manga, or if Rayleigh's part of this has pretty much ended, you know, because Rayleigh is not, he wants to see Luffy become the next king. He said that when he was on the cliff at Sabaody, seeing the Straw Hats off at the beginning of the time skip. Shaki was behind him, and Rayleigh remembered Roger the first time they met, you know, when he's like, you know, it's a nice boat you got there, let's go out and sail the seas, and Rayleigh's like, are you an idiot? I just met you. You're just like, are we talking about sailing the seas, turning the world upside down? What are you talking about? Rayleigh's there remembering that, and he's crying, and he's like, you know, I want to see a new king be crowned in this era before I die. So Rayleigh obviously has a goal, but it's like he's not going to get involved, I think, directly in the Straw Hats' adventure, because this is their adventure. Back when he was on Roger's crew, they faced a bunch of hardships too. There were probably a lot of times when Rayleigh was on Roger's crew where it's like, oh man, don't know how we're going to get out of this one, but just grab your sword and haki it up and just keep swinging until they all fall
fall down and maybe we'll make it through to another day, right? I mean, that's honestly that. So Rayleigh's like, yeah, this isn't going to be an easy journey for them, but I'm not going to hold their hand. You know, I was there to teach Luffy more about haki, to give them a fighting chance to make it at least fair. But from here on out, they got to develop these techniques on their own, and they got to work on their own haki and their abilities, and they know what to do best.
You know, maybe Rayleigh might be kind of like Professor Oak in Pokemon, where after the Straw Hats reach the final island, Laugh Tale, and they get the One Piece, Rayleigh steps out from behind like, hey guys, how you doing? I was here the whole time. You know, I figured you'd probably be getting the Laugh Tale sooner or later. Decided to stop on by and just wait for you. Congratulations on finishing the Pokemon League. Unfortunately, somebody already got the Laugh Tale before you. What? And like Rayleigh pulls back the curtain and Blackbeard's there and he's like, say ha ha. He's like, there's the final champion. Go fight him now. I'm like, so, you know, maybe, I don't know, because I want to see Rayleigh with the Straw Hats again, right? You don't want to see this manga just ending without Rayleigh getting to see Luffy or congratulate him or anything. I mean, I guess we could do like a Straw Hats find, you know, Laugh Tale, then we can do a little bit of a time skip into the future, like a couple of weeks later, you see Luffy and the gang hanging out on Sabaody, having, you know, some drinks with Rayleigh and telling him the story. Might just be a little bit of a scene, but I would like to see them reunited, right? That's Rayleigh, okay? Then you got Scopper Gaban. Third strongest out of the, you know, out of Roger and Rayleigh, but don't put his stock too low there, okay? We are talking about the Scopper Gaban, and mysteries are, you know, often more impressive. You know, you never know what's gonna happen, right? And Oda has not really focused on Scopper too much. I'm gonna assume he is still alive. I'm not 100% on board with the theory that he's this dude, you know, but he still very well might be out there in the world, especially since the Roger Pirates disbanded. You know, some of them, you know, Bullet got captured, but others, you know, managed to make their own ways in the world. Some of them, like Buggy, managed to fly under the radar for like 20-something years. Yeah, Buggy was not that strong of a pirate. I'm sorry, I know, but it's like, he was on Roger's crew for, you know, like 5-6 years, like at least when they were 9 to like 14, they were on Roger's crew for a number of years where they fought the Marines and they fought all these other pirate crews, and it's like no one paid attention to this kid that had a clown nose and managed to connect the dots later when a pirate called Buggy the Clown showed up, you know, so Buggy managed to fly under the radar. Rayleigh, the thing about Rayleigh is the Marines know where he's at. That's not a question. That's not like, we need to find Dark King Rayleigh, where's he at? And he's like, no, there's been many, because he doesn't try to hide his presence. Rayleigh hangs out at Sabaody. He's lived there for a number of years with Shaki. He goes out gambling. He enjoys the theme park. He doesn't hide him. He goes to the brothel. You know, he doesn't hide himself. You know, he's not like undercover or anything. You know, and the Marines have even received many reports that he's there. It's just like, do you want to be the one to try to bring him in? Especially with all the other stuff going on in the world. It's just like, yeah, we know where he's at, but in order to bring Silver's Rayleigh, Dark King Rayleigh in, you would need to send all the admirals to make damn sure that was possible, plus Garp. I mean, just to make damn sure to rein him in. And it's like, he's not hurting anybody. Yeah, he's a fugitive, he's a pirate, but he's not really actively engaging in pirate activities anymore. He's very clearly retired. I think also a lot of the old guard of the Marines, like Garp and Sengoku and Kong, you know, they would look at Rayleigh with a lot of respect, considering all the things Roger and his crew accomplished. And I could see Sengoku and Garp, you know, looking at these reports like, sir, we sighted Dark King Rayleigh at Sabaody. He was gambling in this parlor out in the middle of nowhere. Everybody saw him, you know. We should go and bring him in, right? Like this young Marine's like, we should go bring him in. And Sengoku and Garp are looking at it and they're just kind of like laughing and like, good work, soldier. Go back to paying attention to, you know, the New World or the Yonko or whatever. He's like, but he's right there. And he's like, yeah, but is he hurting anybody? You know, do you want to be the one to be first into that charge? You know, so I think he's like, yeah, he is a fugitive, but you know, so it's probably honestly the same thing with Scopper if we're being straight up, especially with the information network and everything. The reason Buggy was, I think, able to fly under the radar is that's kind of part of Buggy's abilities. Like, he has this crazy amount of luck. Like, that just goes along with Buggy's character. But when it comes to these, like, truly ridiculously strong characters, I'm sure they know Scopper is where he's at, or at least a general idea. Let's say Scopper is the old dude that was hanging out in the East. You know, he's smoking a pipe and he's talking about the war and everything. Let's say that is him. You know, I'm sure the Marines got reports like, yeah, Scopper is he looks like a sheep herder here. He's a sheep herder in the East Blue in some random island, okay? Although in Scopper's case, if this really is him, I mean, he did make an effort to disguise himself, you know? He had a lot of hair back in the day in the ponytail, like shave all that, get the tattoo. I mean, aside from the glasses, you know, and he's also not carrying battle axes around, so, you know, he did make more of an effort to hide himself. But even if the Marines, like, yeah, we know Scopper's hiding somewhere in the East, but, you know, it's just like he's not becoming a big deal. You know, if it's something like Rocks, where if the Rocks crew resurged to become a pirate crew again and started pillaging all over the world, they would have no choice but to go after them, right? Garp kind of was fearful they wouldn't be able to do much, but, you know, if that happened, they'd have no choice. If Rayleigh decided to pick up his sword, if Gaban decided to pick up his axe, and they decided to work together and go back, you know, like, let's go, like that movie Red, you know, like all the old-timers together, let's get one more final score or whatever, the Marines would have to get involved at that point, but until then, you know, there's enough problems in the world, right? So yeah, I'm gonna just throw it out there. I'm pretty sure Gaban did not have a devil fruit either, and Gaban seemed more of like the guy that was like bringing up, like he was like the master of arms, sort of. He was just like, you know, men charge. You know, he was the one kind of giving orders there. So if Roger's the captain, and from what we saw in the last chapter, I mean, he's not quite the same as Luffy, but he gets kind of like. He gets like kind of hyper and like energetic, and he just runs off on his own. That was Roger. So you figure Rayleigh and Scopper were kind of the ones that handled most of the day-to-day activities on the ship. You know, we saw that flashback with Rayleigh kind of yelling at Buggy and Shanks earlier on for arguing, like, get back to work, you know, you two. And I'm sure Scopper Gaban was kind of like that as well. When Odin was charging towards them, Scopper takes out his axes and he's like over to Rayleigh. He's like, you think he'll mind if we cut him down? And you think he'll mind if we cut him down, Rayleigh? And Rayleigh's like, fine by me, let's do this. So they're the ones that definitely take more action. Sort of like how, yeah, Zoro and Sanji, they have their quirks, you know, and they kind of have their rivalry and everything. But, you know, when they arrive on an island and the first thing Luffy does is say, oh, hey, what's that? And he, like, gum rockets away to some unknown area of the island. Meanwhile, it's just Sanji and Zoro and the rest of the crew. Sanji and Zoro are the ones to take charge. You know, it's like something's coming out of the like at Zoe, you know, something's coming out of the tree line. Zoro's like, you know, hang back, I got this, because, you know, our captain ran off to God knows where. He's like, I got this. You know, Carrot comes out and pops out, and, you know, they have their little clash there, right? So, yeah, that reminds me of that. There's a lot of parallels here. Also a parallel, last thing I'll bring up here, now that I've seen these panels side by side, I don't think they're anything, you know, crazy significant other than just comparing Roger to Luffy. There was that panel in the last chapter where Roger was like, I'm gonna be... He was explaining his plan, you know, finding the last island and everything to Odin and Whitebeard. He's like, I'm gonna be... And then it just cuts away to Whitebeard and Odin being like, what? So I was like, why did you do that? If Roger was just going to say, I'm gonna be king of the pirates... Why not just include that? Why have this little, like, you know, transition where you say it and then you cut out what you're the, you know, King of the Pirates line, and then you see it later where just Whitebeard and, you know, Odin's reactions. That's actually, like, shot for shot, panel for panel, something that was already shown during the flashback with Luffy and Sabo and Ace. You know, it's the same thing where Luffy's like, I'm gonna be, and then... quick transition to like a few seconds later, and then, you know, you see Sabo and Ace there, like, are you a kid or something? I get you really are a child, you know, because Luffy was a child when he said that. So it's little things like that that I love that Oda does. It's like, you know, there's a lot of One Piece fans out there that whenever stuff like this happens, they remember panels better than I do, or they scour it like to figure out the significance, and they find this pretty quick. And I'm grateful that they do, because I don't remember that scene. I don't remember the scene where you know, Luffy was saying that little transition with Ace and Sabo. I don't remember that at all. So that's the reference there. It's nothing crazy. Like, Roger did in fact say, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. It's just something that was never said before. So that's why Whitebeard and Odin were so surprised. And then in the case with Ace and Sabo, it was like, only Roger has ever said that, and only Roger has ever attained that status, so they were shocked by someone saying that. It would be like me coming out here and being like, guys, I'm gonna be the first guy to get 200 million subscribers on YouTube.
And it'd be like, whoa, okay, that's a pretty big bar. That's a pretty big award. You're kind of setting your sights on there, man. Like, whoo, chill out there. That's pretty hard to do, right? Or I guess nobody's reached 200 million yet. Like PewDiePie and like T-Series hit 100 million. That'd be like, I'm gonna hit 100 million. I'd be like, whoa, that's ridiculous. No, like very few people have ever even attempted that and reached it, and that's like crazy that you would even say that. Now imagine that coming out of the mouth of like a 7-year-old kid like Luffy. Like, I'm gonna be king of the pirates, or I'm gonna be king of YouTube or whatever. You'd look at that kid like, okay, kid, you know, maybe something, maybe like work your way up, you know? But yeah, so that's just, I wanted to mention that. I wanted to make that comparison there because I saw a lot of people posting that in my notifications on Twitter, like, hey, that's what it was. And I'm like, oh my God, that's pretty cool. But yeah, the original monster trio, guys, we'll see them in action again. It might not be in the next chapter or so, but I think we're going to get another flashback that's made, because this one's focused on Odin. Let's keep that in mind here. This flashback is not to focus on Whitebeard and how badass he was and Roger. We're just going to get that because they're characters in the flashback, but that's not the main focus. That's probably another reason why Oda wanted to skip over that whole fight, okay? But rest assured, I am confident we will get a flashback with Roger being the main character. We get to see Roger in his younger years grow up and become the king of the pirates that we know him to be now, and then we'll learn a lot more about him and his crew and how they fought and everything back then. I mean, at that point, you know, when we get to that point in the manga. So, yeah, the original monster trio, though, fear them, worship them, love them. And waiting for Scopper Gaban to appear in the story, all right? Have a great day, everybody. Happy Boxing Day to all, for Canadians out there, whatever you do on Boxing Day. I don't know, I jump out of boxes personally, but have a good one, everyone. Tekking signing out.